Sure. So ladies and gentlemen, meanwhile, keep conversing on social media using the hashtag EHA2020. 5 days of power-packed panels, 180 plus speakers and 100 plus awards, which is happening right from August 31st to the September 4th. And now we're on our second session for today, coming back, which is on the owner's perspective. And we've got Bhuvnesh and the entire panel already on the screen. Over to you, Bhuvnesh.
So we'll wait for Omer to join in.
Sure.
Yeah. Welcome, Sanjay. And there is Omer. Hi, Omer.
Hi, boss. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you guys.
This is another brilliant session. I usually, whenever I meet somebody for the first time, I always note down what did we chat on. So some of you may want to mute because it'll echo otherwise. Let me tell you, this is a great session. These are great entrepreneurs, right? They bring in, I don't know how many 100 hotels between them. Well, this session is led by Sanjay Sethi. Sanjay is somebody who's very special to me, and he knows why. I connect with his parents. I connect with him in a very special manner. Well, we've lived in the same suburb in Delhi. Truly a wonderful family. Not that the others not. You're all good, but I've known him years. Having said that, I want to start this session. Mr. Binod Chaudhary, Dr. Binod Chaudhary of CG Group is not here today. We must pray for him. He's been detected COVID positive. He's asymptomatic, and let us all pray for him, the family, that he comes out of this clean, and he will, right? So he should stay. Binodji, if you're hearing us, we're all with you, and we're all praying 24/7, and I have full faith in my master. You're going to fly soon, better than ever before. All right. Parikshit comes in to take his seat today. He's based out of Dubai and he's the CFO. Now, Sanjay I've introduced. I shall start with the ladies first. Nirupa. Nirupa is a young, bright, sprightly entrepreneur based out of Bangalore. She's done a lot. So Sanjay will speak more about her. Sonica, who doesn't know Sonica? Sonica is another happening entrepreneur. My neighbor till a few months ago in ITO. She runs the MBD Group's hospitality business and of course the other businesses. But we know her more for the other businesses that she does. I'll bring in Omer. Omer again I met in 2014, 2015 in his office near Safina Plaza in Bangalore on the Infantry Road. Omer bin Jung, extremely strong lineage, but I shall leave the lineage apart. His professional credentials are as good as they can get. Omer, incidentally, is related to one of India's finest families in the cricketing sphere with Saad bin Jung, his younger brother, and also they connect with Mansoor Ali Khan Patodi at some level in the family, and of course the Hyderabad royalty. I shall come into JB. JB, my schoolmate, Modnite, and done a lot with InterGlobe. Now he manages their hospitality portfolio. And of course, Ranjit Batra, again, our neighbor in Panchshil in Delhi, now heads the Panchshil Group's hospitality business. In New Zealand, now in Pune, he's more than a handful, and we shall talk about that later. Now, I won't take much more time. I'll hand over this session to my brother Sanjay Sethi. Sanjay, over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Bhuvnesh. Good afternoon, everyone. I think, as Bhuvnesh mentioned, we begin with our best wishes to Binod for a speedy recovery. Congratulations, Bhuvnesh, for a fabulous setup that you've done. It's been quite engaging right from the morning, and I think we've got some great conversations in the last few sessions. One thing I did notice, Bhuvanesh, that you said in your next life, you want to be an operator. So clearly the owner's side is not the preferred side as far as your interest levels lie. Well, we've got a fabulous panel here, ladies and gentlemen. What we have here is basically the people who put their money on the table for the hospitality industry. This is the people here who represent companies as owners or heads of the organizations which actually put hard cash in building our hospitality industry. And some of us are blessed with great partners from the brand side, and we did hear the brand team speak a little while earlier, some very interesting conversations. What was interesting was that there was a lot of focus on capping or bringing down fixed costs, and I think it's critical to address that. But I think the biggest challenge for all of us is how do we generate demand? Now I want to share some numbers with you, and I read this off a recent PwC report. They did a survey of about 1,000 people in the US sometime in late July, and they were surveying, what sort of risk people associated to various travel forms. And I'll read some numbers for you. So as far as taking a flight is concerned, 70% of the people said moderate to extremely risky. For hotels, staying in a hotel for short-term stays, 54% said moderate to extremely risky. But staying in a branded hotel where they had some comfort of quality and hygiene and safety, that number came down to 45%, saying that they were still, moderately to extremely risky stays. But this was in July. I think things are changing rapidly, and we need to prepare as hotel companies quickly to open our doors, and hopefully we'll get guests soon enough. I'm going to actually today we are not going to discuss about what the government can do for us. I think we've got the message pretty clear. Atmanirbhar means take care of yourselves. As far as we are concerned, government clearly has priorities, and I don't blame them for that, for taking care of larger issues. So we've got to do what we need to do ourselves. We've got to step up between us, the owners, the brand, the teams of the hotels, and deliver shareholder returns, which allows us not only to sustain the current investments, but also hopefully invest further in the years to come. So my first question actually is going to be to the whole team, and everyone on the panel. Maybe we can begin with Sonica, go down to Nirupa, and then the gentleman can sort of step in. So my question here is, where are we today? Are we on the survival mode still, or are we on the revival mode? And where do you think this is heading? Sonica, would you like to take this up front?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Bhuvanesh, for your kind comments about myself, and everybody, good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Sethi, for posing the question first to me. Well, as far as your question goes, I think we're mostly onto if I have to put a proportion, I think it's probably 90% survival and 10% revival. And the way I look at it is that, I see it's going to be a tough battle for another 12 months to 18 months for the hotels. However, with every passing month, you're having a little bit of improvement come in, be it in terms of course, the unlock conditions which have been placed in. Secondly, in terms of the guest confidence. And that's going to actually increase by the passing day. So hence I say that this proportion will keep on changing as we go month on month forward. So if it is 90-10 now, it will be probably 80-20 next month, and probably even higher the next quarter. So I think it's a combination of both of them. And I think notwithstanding the fact that we will be, getting revival coming through, the survival is something that we need to keep it as a predominant objective, because if we lose sight of it and start being a little frivolous on our expenses and all the kind of, cost saving and other efficiencies we put in, we might lose sight of even the revival. So that's how I look at it, Mr. Sethi.
Thank you, Sonica. Please do call me Sanjay. This is the third time I think we're having this conversation. So look, you're saying 90% survival, 10% maybe revival. We've got a stage of thrival that is a long way off. I don't even know whether thrival is a real word. I don't think it is, actually. But Nirupa, your thoughts?
So I agree with Sonica. I do think we're still in survival. For as long as the hotels are yet to break even and still making losses, we're still in survival mode because we still have to figure out ways to keep the business afloat and manage our costs and our expenses. But I do agree that things are looking better month on month. I think probably the worst, I would like to say the worst is behind us. Because now with October, November coming up, I do think that is the busy period for the hotels. And as Sonica already said, there are a lot of relaxations with regards to number of people that can meet in the hotel, with the liquor coming back into the properties. And I think that is certainly going to help revenues and business overall. And hopefully there are a couple of our hotels which are in profit nicely, thankfully to say that. But there are others that are still sort of struggling depending on the market. So I would say by and large, we're still in survival. And I feel we will have to sort of keep our survival hat on for another few months. I think Rajiv Menon went before us, and I agree with him. I think it will take at least 18 to 24 months before we reach our pre-COVID levels. So, but I do feel that the worst is behind us. So that's my thought.
All right, gentlemen, no particular order. I'm going to begin with who's on my screen first. JB, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sure, Sanjay. I think the ladies have put it absolutely spot on. Pretty much survival mode. Businesses are still burning cash. And, we are also at that odd time, when the moratoriums are sort of coming to an end. And a large part of industry, the industry today owes close to 45,000 crores to banks. And this is a journey that all, sort of owners have to cross who owe money out to the bank. So I think we are getting into a kind of a bit of a tough phase as an industry. And look, we are still in a kind of lockdown. So the last guideline which came in a couple of days ago is obviously slightly better, but there is a general geographical imbalance on how mobility of people and goods has been going on, and the economic cycle is very far from being anywhere near starting in some sort of a way. I don't know. I think we will continue to see some of this. The good weather always heralds good business for the industry, and obviously we all wish to put some hope out there that something will happen. But I think broadly there is a deep economic contraction. This is going to be around there for a while. Pretty much survival mode, I think. I think everyone needs to sort of bunker in. I think Sonica put it very well. We shouldn't sort of get carried away with any early green shoots. It's way too early for us to predict a revival. I think we need to possibly even tighten the belts down a bit more as we get into this new phase.
Sanjay, you're muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you, JB, for that. And Parikshit, coming to you, you've got a portfolio which is, beyond India and spread over several countries. Would you like to come in and throw your perspective on this?
So I think, thank you, Sanjay. I think even before we get into hoteliering, there are some issues which we need to confront and conquer first, which is probably saving the jobs, preventing fiscal and statutory default, and how we can collectively save the value chain. Which means even if hotels survive, if the OTA fails, tour operator fails, or amusement parks fail, then the whole value chain will probably fail. So with that said, I think India is in a bit more of a difficult terrain than other global geographies because of the spread of the COVID, and the fear sentiment is very deep-rooted now, and both inbound and outbound. So I think in the next 12 months, it will be our priority to save jobs, prevent fiscal discipline, and just break it. Whatever we see will be after 12 months. That means the winters of 2021.
Thank you, Parikshit. Nawabzada, maybe we can come to you now and look forward to hearing your wisdom on this.
Bhuvanesh cleared the font and front on that, saying that we're not going to get into lineage but into IQ. So let me see if I can so for me, COVID is actually a passing shower. It's not climate change. I think once we put that in perspective, that are we going to deal with this monster on a short-term basis or a long-term basis? So once we realize that it's not climate change, then life becomes a lot more in perspective. We are all talking about growth. We've all started our hotels in the last 5 months from zero. So 1 rupee is 100% growth. So everything is going to be positive. It can't get worse than it was. So in a way, to answer your question specifically, I think we are in a survival via a revival mode. And I think that, we've got on this panel, we've got in excess of 150 years of hospitality experience. And I don't think any of us have any clue as to what lies ahead in the next 3 months. Forget the next 12 or next 15. We have no idea what the monster we are dealing with. I just pray that it's that the revival that's happening doesn't get into again a stagnant mode, and this just becomes a positive and a progressive chart going forward. Because if this was to go backwards, then we've got much larger problems than what we're discussing today. What properties need to do to deal with this is probably just reinvent themselves, figure out what they need to do till the upswing kicks in. And honestly, I do hope that humanity has learned its lesson on how to offer and operate ethical and environment-friendly businesses. Thanks, Sanjay.
Thank you, Omer. Very deep thoughts. Thank you so much for that. I think the 150 years we covered by the gentlemen in the panel. You can take the ladies on that side. We'll cover up for that. Ranjit, your thoughts finally on this question, and then maybe I'll come to the next question to you too.
Yes, good afternoon. I think pretty much in line with my co-panelists, we are definitely in the survival mode with a strategy to revive better. So what I really mean from that is that while we are surviving, we are doing things like keeping jobs intact, giving dignity to our people, our asset, which I feel is going to give us a better revival chance going forward. We're quite fortunate to ride this without much pressure from the investors. So I consider ourselves to be extremely fortunate that we don't have to do such drastic measures. And I'm really looking forward to the revival part with better quality, better commitment. And I'm sure the guests are also equally looking forward to the revival part of Start Celebrating Life. So
thank you, Ranjit. The next question actually that I want to pose again, maybe you can jump in straight away on this one. As an owner, what have been the top priorities for you and your team in the last 5 months? And in hindsight, is there anything that you would have done differently, looking at the last 5 months?
Actually, we were fairly quick to realize what we are getting into with the kind of panic that was setting in. And we definitely realized that travel is going to take a huge beating. And we did take a lot of measures right up front, which we are, seeing the benefits. One of them was actually job security, and that came with a little bit of a sacrifice on everyone's part, and in terms of the salaries. And we were quick to talk to the unions, and the unions are on board, equally understanding. So this is pretty much what we did in the last 5 months. Apart from doing a lot of other things to our assets, things that we wouldn't have been able to do while the hotels were doing regular operations, maintenance, refurb, a lot of engineering work. So this is pretty much what we did. One thing that hindsight one could do was perhaps, while we are sitting here with all our hotels, I wish we had the time, and this is pre-COVID, where we could use a better technique to get better database to reach out to our customers through social media. That's the only interaction we can do right now.
Thank you, Ranjit. Nirupa, you wanted to comment on this question specifically. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and maybe then maybe Omer, you can comment.
Yeah, so I would say the top 3 priorities we focused on. I guess the first one is obviously you have to look at enhancing your revenues, right? So even today, our current thought is only how do you enhance your revenues, because cost cutting can go a certain level, but beyond that, there still is some impact that your guests will see, whether they're there for quarantine business or whether they're there for Vande Bharat mission business, whatever it is. So I think enhancing our revenue in whatever may be the way, whether it's food and beverage or whether it's trying to get as many small little wedding parties, or whether it's your conferences, whatever it may be, that's our top priority. The second one is actually multi-skilling our staff so that the hotels and the employees become a lot more efficient. So if somebody can do like housekeeping plus engineering, we're trying to multi-skill our people. That's the second part of it. And I would say the third part is obviously containing our costs, because in the end, we are trying to see how soon the hotels can all start breaking even. That is the main focus of any business, I would assume. And I agree, like, once no one knew what this would entail, and nobody knew how deep the impact would be. So what we did initially was, we asked a lot of our staff to go on sabbatical. We didn't let them go, but we said, go on sabbatical. We'll pay them a stipend to sort of tide over the bad times. But there were salary cuts quite early in the day. But the good thing is that at least they were getting some sort of sustenance. And, when people do go on sabbatical and business starts to pick up, it's easy to get them back right on board, as opposed to letting go and rehiring people. The only one point I would say I wish we had done earlier was getting the hotels to sort of get on board on cloud kitchens a little sooner, because F&B was the only source of revenue during the entire lockdown period when the hotels had to close, and F&B was the quickest to bounce back. So I wish the hotels had, become a lot more agile in getting out their menus to the customers and to the city, because we saw standalone restaurants do that a lot more quicker. So that would be the one thing I wish, we had sort of got on board earlier.
Thanks, Nirupa. So in the operator session a little earlier, we heard about ancillary revenues becoming really a big thing for them. In fact, next year's budgets of yours will actually do that as the largest revenue stream, the way they were. Laundry and delivery services. And JB, any thoughts on this? Or on the
so Sanjay, was a very busy time for us last couple of months, and I think if I was to go in the order of how things started, I think I certainly want to say that we were kind of a bit well prepared. We started to make a lot of moves as early as February. And so we moved into it as the lockdown happened. We felt we were sort of in a good space. There are lots of conversations and intervention that had happened. So the usual, safety was obviously the first area. People, assets, cost. A lot of work was done on cost early on in March. I think we managed to get out almost between 60 and 70% of cost down. We bought in salary cuts early, but they were kind of very mild. We sort of maintained that mild salary cut only at the upper level of the business. We did not go sort of further below. And obviously, like Nirupa said, we just focused a lot on the opportunistic business. We were possibly one of the first few hotels to offer rooms on quarantine. We did almost about 20 or 30,000 rooms for healthcare workers, Vande Mataram Bharat crew, and so on. I think one of the very important things that we did, and we started this sometime in April, is we launched an internal program of sort of visualizing the future, and that kept our people engaged in deciding what the future would look like from a product perspective, ops perspective, ancillary revenues, as you just mentioned, and even conduct and culture, what cultural shifts we would need to do. That sort of what we call IGH version 3+ has become a kind of a guiding beacon for our organization. We use that as a lens on every decision we are taking currently for the future. So that's gone down well. And I think, interesting question you asked, what we could have done differently. And I feel now, when I look at it in hindsight, and this is something that's been around, Sanjay, you and I have spoken about it, Mr. Kant alluded to this morning. Our representation, at the government level is fragmented. And I sometimes, and all the associations have just worked so hard in sort of trying to get things moving. If we were to take a step back, we do contribute to 7% to GDP. We do employ 9%. But is that getting seen in its entirety at the government is something that we need to sort of question and understand. Because even today, there is no one common voice that we are able to put together as an industry that we are adhering to protocols, we are safe across all compliant hotels. I mean, we are all here. I know we've got 10,000 staff across our own hotels and managed hotels. We've not had cases or enough cases to scare people away. Sri Lanka does a great job on this. You know, the government comes together and the industry comes together. Maybe the industry needs to counsel the government and work with the government and create some voices out there and some communication that should give people more sort of confidence, and we should do it in a more proactive way as an industry. I think that's something that should be a lesson. I believe we should introspect as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, JB. I think you made a very valid point that, you know, we are really not perceived as an industry that's large enough. And when you look at the employment numbers, like you mentioned, it's about 8 to 9% of the total workforce in India. We're talking about that every 12 people you see on the road, one of them is connected with hospitality and tourism in some way or the other. Now, that's a significant number when you look at it from that perspective. Omer, any quick thoughts before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest challenge, and for all the 1,000 people we employ today, the single most response is that nobody imagined the world without customers. Everyone thought that we had to keep them, we had to nurture customers, but we just never imagined that they would evaporate. I think that is the largest elephant in the room. Flowing from that, I say that thank God for international brands. The experience and network that they're bringing in today is just invaluable. It's like a vaccine for hospitality, and I would not imagine myself owning close to 1,000 rooms today and not having an international brand working with us. What we've done is, of course, the cost controls have gone in. We've removed all contract labor. We've invested in our staff. There's been a huge amount of training, and we've ensured that there is little or no retrenchment right across all our hotels. Of course, there've been the statutory pay cuts and so on, but there've been more deferments than cuts. We are focusing more on holding on to the right resources because we feel that they are the real people who are going to drive this revival for us. For us, everyone's become a salesperson. So right from the GM to the security guy, everyone needs to be selling, whether it's F&B or experience. We are largely in the luxury space, so we need to always be selling experiences. The obvious stuff that we've done is that we've sort of upgraded our health protocols. We've made the hotel COVID friendly. We've gone into touchless check-ins, touchless checkouts, and that sort of thing. What we would have done differently in hindsight, not a lot. But I think that, we've always been, especially in Bangalore, we've always been on the start box and saying, okay, the hotel's going to start day after. Let's get ready. Let's start. Let's see what happens. If we'd known it's going to be the sort of 5-month lockdown, we might have just shut down the hotel and just thought it differently and then just opened it once and for all instead of the start, stop, which has really been very detrimental to both the market and to the confidence of the customer.
I agree, Omer. That's been a really rough one and tough one for all of us over here. Moving on quickly to the next question, maybe Sonica, you can step in on this one. Have you been involved in the revenue protection of both sides of the business at all, or you've left it largely to the brands to run that for you?
Sanjay, fortunately, we predominantly have franchise agreements with our brands, and hence we take control of most of the destiny for ourselves, except for the kind of fees which is actually paid out to for the license. So hence, if I were to look at it, we've been predominantly responsible for our destiny. But I think I would probably, rather than just looking at, the way, the operational efficiencies have come about, or we have, taken care of our team, all of that goes without saying. But I think I would probably like to go back and, retrospect a little bit more and see, how things could have been differently. I think the biggest challenge that we're receiving right now is not what we can internally control, but in terms of the external support. I think we, as what JB also said, we as a voice, I think now need to learn from our couple of years and probably a couple of months back experience that as a voice, we need to make sure that if today the government is banking upon us as, and propagating tourism, then, it's not that we are self-sufficient to take care of all the parameters on our own. So I would not probably even look at support from the brands or anybody else. But as a voice, okay, they say if you're able to build 400 crores of a hotel, then probably you can manage all the expenses yourself. But at the end of the day, most balance sheets are so highly levered that, they're not able to survive by just cutting their operating costs. What about the interest? After 3 months, what happens? So I mean, we've been fighting for an infrastructure status for this industry for a long time. But I think it's high time we all come in together and make our voice heard and documented and have a positive impact over it. At the end of the day, if we don't get that, our interest levels are very high. Our tenors of the loans are extremely short. We're barely able to, operating break even in 3 years of operations. So, paying up for our loans and all within 7 years is impossible. You see how it is. And apart from that, if we get the infra status, there are a lot of other things we get. So what I completely agree with what Mr. Singh said. I think all of us have got our priorities correct. Payroll, cost, XYZ. But I think we need to look at the bigger picture, and which is beyond the control of the operator, the brand, or probably people at the shop floor. I think we need a more conducive environment. And the other countries are doing it. I think the first benefits that have been able to actually been garnered are by the tourism and travel industry. Why not India? Why is it left to us to actually take care of ourselves? It's not easy. It's not easy. So I think I'm looking at it as a third parameter, which we now, if I were to go back in time, I think we need to plow our efforts to get our act in together and make a strong point to the government on that. So I wouldn't look at the operator or the brand per se for this.
So true, Sonica, and I agree that a large part of the cost side today lies in the debt servicing side of the business in today's environment. And that one-time restructuring that RBI has announced now is something that we still need to read the fine print in it. But it is not going to come with its own challenges because, whatever the RBI may say, the banks are not going to look at it very favorably.
They don't even fall in the MSME category. I mean,
I think they're looking at MSME now. So hopefully
I hope so.
So hopefully that will be some relief to some of the hotel-owning companies. So coming to the cost side, we spoke about revenue contribution. Maybe, what initiatives have you as owners been specifically involved in running on the cost side? I mean, the operating side of the business. And I know, Ranjit, you've been very active on the operating cost side of the business. In fact, your company comes up as an example to follow very often. Maybe you'd like to share some of the thoughts over there.
Thanks for the compliment, Sanjay. That means we are doing a good job as asset managers. Yes, looking at the P&L, one can go on and on about the small cost, but primarily one, in my view, should have focused on two big issues, which is salaries and electricity. These are the two costs that personally I've also learned a lot. From the salary perspective, it's basically boils down to how in the pre-COVID days, how we were overstaffed anyway. There was this whole chaos about hiring, and there were people coming from every different brand joining a single hotel without much of, there was more like a trial and error. And sometimes even the errors would be overlooked because of the frenzy to grow for the brand's perspective. So from my side, I am quite determined that I'll never let my guards down on the cost, especially from the salaries, where I'm pretty sure we can get the same job done with better motivated people who we have as owners stood by with better talent who do much more multi-skilling. And as far as fixed costs, like JV was mentioning, we've also reduced our cost to almost about fixed cost to about 73%. I'm still discussing with our operators to maybe look at some of the partners that we have, which we have no control over, who have not been supportive in these times. And I would like to actually name it. It's Oracle and Micros, which has been quite painful. I would definitely like to see some solution on that from the operator's perspective.
Thanks, Ranjit. Nirupa, do you want to come in, and maybe Omer after that, if you would like to jump into this section?
Yeah, I agree with what Ranjit had to say. Fixed cost has been the biggest, I guess, focus for anybody, because like you said, the entire goal is to see how you can break even. We have also noticed how the hotels can operate quite well with a much lower staff to room ratio. There are inefficiencies, obviously, that were kind of just overlooked, which people are going to now focus on. Yes, apart from electricity and salaries is the biggest thing. So we've done things like making sure that we just shut off quite a few floors. Just make sure you're running with one floor open for the rooms that are there. Yeah, and those were the main two things. Nothing major apart from that. We've managed to reduce our costs of fixed costs by not by 73%, by about 60% or so. Yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Omer.
I'm going to skip the part where I'm going to be duplicating what has already been said by Ranjit and Nirupa. We took the hotel and we said, if you were to shut down, what is your zero base cost? And what is the minimum you need to just keep that hotel alive without it getting fungused and without it getting killed? So we use that, and of course it's our money and the shareholders' money that goes out. So we are responsible for every penny that is spent. So we worked on that, and it said incrementally as the hotel picks up, we'll try and see how we can incrementally continue that spend in the same proportion as to the revenue that's getting earned. Like I said earlier, we've sort of done away with contract labor. We are multitasking. Of course, the pay cuts, HLP has already been mentioned. We have a natural attrition that people who had come in from outside Bangalore are both feeling insecure, especially the younger people, and the parents are feeling insecure that we are not able to keep these people as safe as we could in the city, and they want to just go back. And that natural attrition, we have no option but to agree with. And we're not replacing that except just the critical ones that we need to keep the hotel functioning to what we need. Banqueting is, of course, going to be a really big hit on all hotels. 50-60% of incomes for city hotels used to be from there. So that's something that we're going to have to just scale down. We can't scale down the space, but we're going to have to scale down the kind of cost we had on that. And the one thing that we've done is that we've really not retrenched a lot. And we've definitely not done any pay cuts to the lower two levels of the people who work for us, and we're very proud in having to be able to say that.
Thanks, Omer. So before I go to my next question, Bhuvnesh, a question for you. When I saw the last panel, there was no Q&A after the panel. If that's the case, then I'll paste the questions accordingly.
No, there are Q&As, but I'll have to now get on. There are a whole lot of them.
Unfortunately, that for the end?
I'm not getting feed. No, there are. We can take questions.
So, Bhuvnesh, can I just finish this our set of questions and then come in from outside? I just want to know how to pace myself. So I'll keep about 10-15 minutes at the end for the Q&As. So Parikshit, coming to you now, in your view, what do you think the brands should be doing to ease the burden for the owners today? Are there any fixed fees, etc., that you think they can sort of step up and say, listen, for this period of time and a little bit more extended, because it will take time to catch up, we're going to let go of this? And what is it that you would fight for as an owner?
No, Sanjay, we are lucky that we have been exposed, or we are working with more than one very large global brand. So we have been exposed to some good practices. So I'll just start with one good practice before I dwell into, and I do not know whether they have been applied in India. In some of the hotels, some of the brands have set up a fund from their corporate. For all unpaid staff, they are contributing $100 per month. So the brand is paying that money from their pocket to reach the employee, keep them motivated. So it's a joint journey of keeping staff motivated between the brand and the owner. So it's not, it's your owner, you take care of it. That is not the philosophy. Second one was, in some brands, in a country where there are 4 or 5 hotels, they have come back and combined all managerial positions. So in a hotel, you have level 1, level 2, level 3 position. Probably level 1 and 2, starting from an executive chef, which is more on the ground. They're saying when business picks up, we'll bring it back. So that way, payroll cost you can save by firing the little guys. That doesn't give you anything. So I think brands have a big role in reducing your fixed cost, especially in the payroll, by taking the top layer out. And I think as owners, we should be insistent. In one case, I'll tell you, I was insistent that across a country, you have 6 hotels. We need 1 GM, 1 finance, 1 executive chef, 1 F&B manager, and through technology and other means to bring it. They've accepted it, and they are defining a standard of how to deliver that. So I think this is one thing we should. Third thing, I think we are often misguided by the loyalty programs. So I think we should force upon the brands to give us a P&L of the loyalty programs, telling us this is done at a no profit, no loss basis. Because a large part of if you look for any international brands, between 5.5% to 10% of your expenditure is on various baskets hidden. And often in a P&L review, it does not come starkly on your face. We look at the incentive management fee, we forget the reimbursables, we forget other lines. So I think that is one thing we should do, and we should insist on ROI-based marketing spends. We should not allow money to be spent just for the sake of it. And the last thing which we are now instilling with all the brands is, in a hotel daily, they look at the revenue report, which I think everybody looks at it. That revenue report, how much short is it from your break-even revenue, needs to be flagged to everybody in the hotel. It's like a game of cricket. If your target is 100, if you have missed, then you have to do something either on expenses or on that. At least at an operating level, you become. So I think these are things which, from a brand perspective, they can bring on the table quickly for us.
Thank you for those inputs, Parikshit. And I must share with the audience and the panel members here that Parikshit and I worked together in our Taj days at Taj Bengal. And I can share with you that he's one of the finest financial minds I've met in the industry thus far. And Parikshit, when you have some luck with that transparency on the brand marketing costs, please do share the mantra with us for that. We'd all like to jump on the bandwagon there.